Hello, so this is a video on another video on my schizophrenia since that's what I like to talk about. I find it so interesting that I talk about it so much. Essentially, Iwakura is a woman, so I appear like a man, but I'm actually a woman. But she's also not a human woman, so she has a very horrifying mind. But what's going on is that Iwakura is essentially the Cold War itself, and Iwakura is also death and other things that I could. Iwakura is a lot. But this is what's going on inside my mind. And I don't believe I have a human body. But anyways, the the third part is that there's this album by Gregory and the Hawk called Moenie and Kitchi. And this is a very important album to me because essentially I was able to figure things out when I was listening to it. Like the whole album I interpret, at least interpret, if it's not real, that this is some sort of art piece on my own mind. This album and the words she is saying, and also the sound of the music and what the music is implying itself. So I figured that out, and essentially what I'm saying is it's about a scene in particular, and also the life of the woman who is named Kitchi, who is Lenny Wakura herself. Now, Kitchi was a Mexican black woman who moved to the United States. And anyway, she got involved. She had a computer science major, and then she got involved in the military and was involved in battles. And she also had gender dysphoria, so she wanted to be a man, even though she couldn't really be a man, but she wanted to be. And anyways, so she was involved in a battle in Russia, and also somehow was in the Vietnam War, but I haven't figured that part out yet. But 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 she was involved in a battle in Russia, since in this Cold War there was battles in Russia, in my Cold War, and during this war, well, during the war she had shot a man and killed him, who this woman Kichi, but also during the war in 1976. So that's obviously before I was born. Like I said, this is all in my head. And also she was on an airplane, and this is mostly what the album is about, a scene where she was on an airplane during the war, and they dropped a bomb on a group of Russians in a field, in a battle. And then the next night, she visited those Russians in the field. And it was the dead of winter, and it was at the nighttime now. By the time they got there, the night had fallen, and they had visited the dead bodies all around the field after the explosion. And while they were out there, there was a stray man who it was Kichi and Monie. And Monie was Kichi's friend, who she would later realize she had fallen in love with. And they were both women, and they were both in the war, and they were the few women soldiers in the war. And when they visited these bodies, there was also a third one who was some extraneous man who isn't really important. But Moni got shot by the Russian and was killed. She was shot in the heart. That's why I always seem to notice bleeding heart flowers. When I was a kid, there were these bleeding heart flowers outside of my house when I was a little kid, and I would notice them because this schizophrenia, I've already known about it for my whole life. It's already been inside me. And I actually knew about the war when I was like 7 or 8. I knew about all that stuff because there was this pond with catfish that I saw in real life, and it reminded me of war trenches before I could even concept of what that. I was like 7 or 8. I didn't know what a war trench was, but when I saw these catfish, it reminded me of war trenches and all these sorts of things I've experienced in my life. Just realizing it all now when I'm 26. And then, anyways, so she was shot in the heart, and the scene is that Kichi approached her, and also the Russian was shot by the extraneous man, who was also part of the American military. And anyway, she approached and, lie down with Moenie on the ground. And that's when she realized she had fallen in love with Moenie. And that's why it's an equation where Moenie is my wife, who is Meredith Godbro, who is the singer of the album at least, but also the composer of the album and also played instruments on the album. Now, whether or not she knows who I am is up for debate. I really don't know if she knows who I am. All I know is that she is my wife, and that I am Kitchi, and that she is my wife by this war that had happened inside of myself. Thus, I have a ring on my finger, a ring, and it's actually more of a female kind of ring since Lainey Wakura or Kitchi was a female. So essentially what I believe that I am is Lainey Wakura, who is Kitchi. So what this means is that I'm essentially Lainey Wakura, who is like this emo Japanese lesbian girl, who is Kitchi, who is this more like a straight kind of Mexican black woman who went to the United States, like I said, and ended up in this battle. And that's essentially what's going on in my mind.